Here we are discussing fundamentals of validation in React Hook form. As always, you could find rest of the React Hook form videos and recommended references along with GitHub repository of the demo project in video description and inside the first comment of this video. So there are 5 types of validation rules that you can pass to the library React Hook form. First of all, we have required validation saying that the input control must have a non-empty value before submitting the form. Then we have min length and max length for enforcing the number of characters that you can pass to the control. To impose validation based on value of the control, we have these validation rules min and max, through which we can specify the minimum value or maximum value allowed inside the control. And then if you want to enforce a pattern for the input control value, we can specify the regular expression with this pattern validation rule. And finally, we have the validate option for specifying custom validation inside the controls. Now actually, these listed items are the options from the register method to specify the explained validation rules. So you could see the same inside this register method options. Required, max length, max, min, pattern, validate are the options which we can pass to the register method. So through these register options, we will specify the validation rules that we want to enforce on each control. First of all, I will set the min and max length validation for this mobile. So here we go. So while invoking the register method for the mobile control, we'll pass the register options like this. Min length is equal to 10 and max length is also 10. So we must provide a mobile number having 10 digits. Now it's not necessary to pass the same value to both of these validations, min length and max length. It differs from control to control based on its requirement. For example, if you are having a password input control here, you might want to enforce minimum 6 characters, so you can pass min length as 6 like this. Okay. Now I want to set both of these controls, customer name and mobile, as required. So along with these validation rules, I will set required as true. Likewise, we have to enforce required validation for this customer name. Required is equal to true. Now let's see how this validation works. Inside this form submit event, we are already printing the form data when we submit the form. Now if you try to submit this fresh form, the process of validation will fail. In order to see the same, let me open the developer console. If you try to submit this fresh form, you can't see the form data printed inside the developer console because the function that we have passed to the handle submit here on submit will not be invoked when the form as a whole is invalid. In order to catch such validation errors, we can pass a second callback like this on error. Let's define the method here. It's a function with single parameter and the type of the parameter will be field errors. It's from the React Hook form library. So let me import that here. Inside the function, I will just print the error object. Now, if you submit the same form, you will get the validation errors object like this. So inside the control customer name, we have the validation error of the type required. And then we have mobile control having this required validation error. Even though we have specified other types of validation for the same control mobile like min length and max length, it's not showing inside this validation error object here. We can discuss that later. Now let's fill this control with some random values. So here we have 4 digits. Now let's try submitting the form again. See, this time we don't have any validation error for customer name, but for mobile control, we have min length validation error. Now, when it comes to these two validations, min and max, we are talking in terms of value that we can pass to the control, like range of values. It's exactly similar to these validations, min and max length. Only difference is that when we consider value here we are considering the length of characters. Now we're going to use this pattern validation for validating the pattern of the email passed to this control. So here we go. Pattern is equal to. Now here we just need to provide a regular expression like this so that this expression will be matched with the value that we have entered into the control here. Submit the form. So we have these validations on customer name and mobile. Now, as per the regular expression, it is allowed to have an empty string inside this email control here. Now, if you provide an invalid email address like this, you will get the validation error. Sorry, the browser is already running the HTML validation on its own. So let's disable that inside the form using this attribute no validate. Submit the form. See, this time we have a validation error for the control email, and it's because of the pattern that we have passed. Now inside this error object, for all validation errors, you could see this property message as empty. You could see the same for this required validation also. Through this message property, we can specify the error message that we want to show along with the input control when there is such a validation error. For that, for any of the validation options we have discussed, we'll pass an object like this, and through the value property, we'll pass the value for the validation rule. And then with this message property, we can specify the validation error message like this: incorrect email format. Now if you do the same for this required validation, it looks like this: value is equal to true. That's what the required option expect the least, a boolean value true or false. Then here we have the message to be shown along with the control. This field is required. We'll show these error messages along with the respective controls in next lecture. Now since we have the same required validation for mobile, I will do the same here. Now let me copy paste this object for min length. Here the value is 10 and the message will be must be 10 digits. Now the same object could be assigned to max length because the requirement is same. Let's reload the app. Now if you submit the fresh form, you could see the error message we passed to the respective register method. Now in case of required validations, you could simplify it like this. Instead of the object, you could directly pass the error message. So if there is a non-empty string assigned to the required option, then the library assumes the control as required and the passed string will be considered as the validation error message. So let's do the same for this customer name. Let's try it again. So here we have the required validation and the passed string is taken as the validation error message. So in this lecture, we have learned how to enforce validations to form controls using these register options here. Now if you have a custom validation requirement, you can do that with this validate option here. We're going to discuss that in another video. Now in next lecture, we'll be showing all of these validation error messages along with the respective form controls.